record this. We've got 32 people. Would love to see your faces on a Friday. If you're outside, it's probably kind of bright. I'm inside, and it's bright. Well, hello. I think Huckle wants to do the whole thing too. You want to do the whole thing today? Hey. Nope. I know I'm going to pass out for a while longer. I'm 9 years old. All right. So welcome on a Friday. Lots going on. So we're continuing with chapter 7. I think that this is an excellent window for you to do the Food Matters project. So again, it's just going to get closer and closer and closer. So I'm going to keep reminding people because I want you to do well with this thing. And so maybe you're taking this time to do your other classes because I only know you're extremely busy human beings. But if you have some time to start working on the Food Matters paper, it's a big paper. And if you pay attention to ratemyprofessor.com, no, just kidding. I was going to say, that's like, so somebody told me about that, the other day, and I was like, what? I was like, so I went and looked myself up. It's hilarious. And so it's always good to see people cut loose on you online. Mostly my classes, like the ratings, it's like 5s or 1s. So it's and many more 5s than 1s, but it's hilarious. So yeah, but people said, hey, this is a real thing. The paper's a real thing. Take it seriously. It's a big paper. So I guess I have to agree with the random reviews that I read yesterday. So stay on top of it. It's really the thing too that you can get a jump on and do well at in this class, even though you got good reviews. Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there's lots of people that hate me on there too, but we'd be grading on our opinions and arguments. I just want everybody to do well on this paper. So the ingredients, the section on looking up different ways of farming, agriculture, GMO, local, organic, and then that last section that has to be pretty specific. So yeah, you are allowed to include your own personal insight, but of course everything has to be cited, in-text citations, and the more you do that, the more scholarly your paper is. And people are like, oh, isn't that plagiarizing? No, it's plagiarizing if you don't do that. And all the master's thesis and doctoral theses that people are writing in this and other departments, every page has several citations, especially if you're building on good, solid work, right? So any questions about that paper? Like, will you take a points off if you disagree with what we've stated? No. I mean, but I have heard this, right? And so, one of my classes was, and this is going to bring me to my sort of special talk about the day, racism and what happened with the shooting the other day in Atlanta. But, one of my students was talking, there was a big debate going on in another online class about race and the existence of racism and white privilege. I'm not interested. I disagree with my students all the time, and they still like, did you follow the rules of the assignment? Did you complete it? Was it on time? So yeah, you could succeed and have differing opinions. You can't suggest that things are true when they're not, demonstrably. And then, like, you couldn't say white privilege isn't real and then kind of go off on a tangent. So I think that that's a great question. It's a huge balancing act between what you believe, your soapbox, how passionate you are for things, and reining that in a bit within the constraints of any assignment. And being young people that I would hope would have passionate opinions and insight about things. This is sociology, right? Where it matters, where it doesn't matter maybe in calculus if you're so very passionate about something or not. I could be wrong. Sorry for math. Like, Storm is listening to me in the basement probably right now, getting super mad because he's a math guy. But as far as what we talk about and why, so no. Do you want us to use scholarly sources? Popular sources are, you need to at least make sure that 7 of your sources are scholarly sources. Yeah, popular sources, depends on what they're claiming. This is a social behavioral science class and paper. And as such, I want us to make sure that it's not the first page of Google. It's Google Scholar, or it's more importantly, your library where those things are peer reviewed. Sorry, I got to let Huckle out quick. Um, so yeah, and I would hope that we can, as human beings, disagree about things, and also keep in mind in a class, what science and facts are. Look, we're here in this class, so everybody's opinions matter. So it brings me to this the shooting the other day, and I want to talk about it because we talk about racism and discrimination and access and power and sociology all the time. And I just want to read this quote. It says, "There is a systematic refusal to acknowledge racism as racism, and it's killing us. Although I'd like to avoid any of the dramatic statements, it is indeed literally leading to the loss of life." And so, of course, the other day, 8 people are shot or killed in Atlanta. 6 out of those folks are Asian Americans and women. And I think that during the press conference, though I didn't watch it till later, the head police guy in charge, who has since been replaced, said that the shooter was having a bad day. And I just need to put a pause on this so that we understand that there's a big reality out there, and that is racism, and the extra racism towards Asian Americans and people that descended from different places in the world based on that heritage. And if we look at that historically, we have a poor track record as a country of treating these people with dignity and equality. And so, yes, it is a big problem. And I wanted to read one more thing, and that is this piece here. And it says, and this was written by someone who identifies as Asian American and is a female. "He didn't have a sexual addiction. He had a racist, sexualized fantasies about dominating Asian women. In other words, he had fantasies of white supremacy and acted on them." So I want us to understand here that what white supremacy means and what racism means and how important it is that we call racism what it is. It's a hate crime. We need to be able to identify these things in a way that is meaningful and is not avoiding the past or avoiding a conversation about, statistical inequality that impacts the qualities of people's lives or whether they live or die. And whether that's at the hands of police, whether that's at a handful of statistics that are important and massively unequal, we know this. So I want us to, be mindful of all the different media that you're reading, because I think it's important, just like we look at a functionalist perspective or a conflict perspective, I think it's important to be able to look at how the media presents something like this, and how police deal with it. The fact that this person was apprehended, um, you know, is beyond me for this type of a crime, and how we know people of color are treated, and how many of these mass murder terrorists who fit the exact bill that we know they're going to, because of statistically, significant involvement in these types of things. And yet dominant culture doesn't want to say these people are terrorists. They don't want to say that this is racially motivated or a piece of racism. And I get that. But it is. And these things exist, and they are statistically measurable, and important, and they impact people's lives in a big way. So I'm just encouraging everybody here to continue to see things from a culturally pluralistic view, to understand that white privilege exists, racism exists. And that is a member of dominant culture. If you are a member of dominant culture, that's, again, what I say all semester long. It's about responsibility. It's not about guilt. And so how can our generation help with things like this happen? I read the news, get frustrated, never know what I can do. I will say this is important. Intergroup contact is one of the best ways to deprogram racism. Spending time with people, right, who are diverse, supporting diverse businesses, supporting diverse people in public, going outside of your friend group and acknowledging these groups of people that we know don't get a fair shake, and understand that the dynamics of that. Listening. We can listen to people of color. We can listen to people of different genders who have different issues that face them. And so I think, there's lots that your generation can do. And I do believe that my students, your generation, is way less hung up in dangerous ways about things like gender and race. And you are more fluid, and you are more understanding, and you are less racist. And there's little tolerance for racism in a younger generation of people, the people that I teach. And you don't have as much habit energy in as much generations or decades of that, right? Versus somebody who's 90 or 50 or 60, the habit energy of racism or sexism and that kind of thing. So again, you are also a generation, and now I am too, that ingests so much social media that we have to be able, that's why I'm training you as sociologists, so that you don't just see a headline and not go, I'm training you to be that examining and that skeptical and have that background with social behavioral science so that you can read between the lines and examine it from a dominant perspective, from a disadvantaged perspective, from a different gender perspective, from an outside this culture perspective. So yeah, when I hear things like, we're not that nation, we don't discriminate in that way, this is not how we treat Asian American folks, we do. We have a long and easily identifiable, we could go down the line from miners in California in the 1800s who had to pay a miner's tax, and then massacres of certain towns and people, and law after law after law, not allowing people to marry and Asian American people to participate. Look, it sounds like it's from the playbook, right, of the same thing from the South with African Americans, and it is. And we've got to dismantle that playbook, right? We have to dismantle white supremacy, because the cognitive dissonance between what we did deviance, right? We just did that. What we promise, equality and justice, and what we deliver upon, not the same for everyone. And those are very easily measurable categories. So anyway, I think that, stay mindful, everybody. And so again, this is not a political thing. This is a reality that we talk about all the time in sociology. And I want us to be able to support and understand views and beliefs with that foundation of social science, because so much of this applies to this. Yep, I'll say that. So anyway, all right, social justice moment. We will go back now to chapter, where are we, 7 on stratification. I did just open up the questions again, and already 40 some folks have answered that. So let's look at this as, let me see, where did we leave off last time? Before I do a question, let me come back here and do a screen share, and I'll finish what I started yesterday, which was the 4 basic principles of social stratification. And then I'll kind of jump back for a second into a couple of those questions and see how people answered them. All right. So it's a trait of society, not a reflection simply of an individual. What's that, Jason? Are you wearing another Bulls hat? That's right. I just decided the other day after I showed that one that I'm gonna showcase all the hats over the next couple weeks, maybe. Who knows? Social stratification carries over from generation to generation. Again, not just an individual piece. I covered these last time. And let me get to the next one. 3, social stratification is universal but variable. Okay, so I said that, every single culture has some form of social stratification, a way that they organize society, a way that they create a bit of inequality or a lot of inequality, and in the meantime, it's justified, right? Every culture does that. But even though that is universal, what and how much and how a system is unequal, that varies, right? Certain systems have a great deal of tolerance for inequality. Certain systems have and make sure and seem to be pioneers of making sure that there's very little inequality. So, when we look at this, and this is just a tiny piece, right, variable here. Do you believe that a company executive is worth more than the pay of a secretary or administrative assistant? Who does more work at a restaurant, the server and the cooks, or the management? And what's that work look like? So as we place or we look at how the hierarchy, or what the hierarchy of people is, come on, hurry, get it, come on. Sorry, buddy. So many animals in this house. Animal house. All right, social stratification number 4 involves not just inequality, but the fact that the belief in it exists and it's well defined in your culture as fair. right? So like, obviously these people are more deserving than these people. And it's a narrative. And it's not a conspiracy. It's what people at the top continue to say about certain folks so that they can maintain power. And of course, some of that changes, right? Over time, we could look at that. We always know that that is true. But do you believe that the Kennedys are deserving? See, I'm being fair here, right? I'm looking at multiple sides. Do you believe that the Kennedys are deserving all the money that they have? A lot of that family money is transmitted wealth, right? Also, you know, do people in this class, hardworking students, think that George Bush deserved to go to Yale with a C or below average in high school? I mean, usually this isn't a political thing. This is just my students, like, they react poorly to that. Right? Because not many of you got C's in high school, and none of you are going to Yale currently, to my knowledge. To my knowledge. I do watch some interesting lectures online, but I don't think that just because I watch a lecture from somebody at Harvard that I'm going there. Unfortunately, not so much. And many of you got straight A's in high school and are not attending these places. Because, and what I mean by that, for those of you who don't know, there's all sorts of family-like spaces, right? Family slots for people that donate to the school, that have like a lot of money or a family history, and that name is somehow associated with those schools. And really only recently have I started to see these, you know, these like college admission scandals, right? Where, I don't know, people get busted paying money for other people to take their kids' tests or things like that. I don't know. None of this is new. You know, this has been going on for a long, long time. Okay, let me stop the share real quick and pop over here to some questions. So those are the four things. You should know those four things about social stratification. Okay. And let's look at one of these questions. Do you agree that our system of wealth, or do you agree that our system of wealth or the way that we distribute it is fair? 44 people chimed in. 1 said yes. 18 said no. 11 said, who said things would be fair? That sounds like my dad. And 14 said the inequality is out of hand. So not many people saying yes, 18 saying no, and then an even split between just like nobody promised that things would be fair anyway, or that the inequality is out of hand. And then let me look at this other one. All right. Now this is an interesting question. This is one of my favorite questions of the semester. And so let me see. Okay, the question is, most people could get ahead in the United States if they really tried. All right. This is not a new kind of a distribution here. The numbers that you voted in just the last handful of minutes since I posted these questions is pretty typical, and also continuously shocking. So let me read it. Most people could get ahead in the United States if they really tried. 16 people agreed, and 29, basically almost twice as many, disagreed. Okay, I am looking into the empty boxes. I was going to say the eyes of. So Hannah and Lindsay and Jackson and Lenora and Anna and Elena and Maisie. I'm looking into your eyes. And then I'm looking also into some boxes too. And I'm asking, why are you paying this amount of money to be in college if twice as many people think that they can't get ahead if they really tried? What's going on here? I'm shaking my computer. I don't understand the answer to this, and yet I do. So let's talk about it. And I will take a moment, since I've been talking for 19 minutes, to
If I can speak, I guess it would depend on how you define like ahead. Like how ahead are you talking about? Are you talking about like CEO of some company, or able to buy a house ahead? So
I don't know. Yeah.
please
Um,
ignore the cat in the background. Uh,
yeah. I leave that option open. I didn't on purpose sort of define it, but it isn't. Yeah. So are we talking like my parents rented their whole lives and now I can own a home? Or are we talking like, you know, just hanging out with Jeff Bezos all over the world? Or I don't know. Does he do that? I don't even know. So, okay, good. Who else? Why else? I mean, why did you say yes And why did twice as many people say no?
I think that especially today, there's a lot of ways to like get ahead, not as much the traditional way. So even people who aren't in college and stuff like can get ahead. I know that one of the big names like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or one of those people like was like a high school dropout or something like that. And like especially with internet and stuff today, you can have like the influencer thing. There's a lot more like interesting job opportunities, and a lot of teens are being like taken off to fame, and it's crazy.
Is there a famous, my boys tell me that there's a famous TikTok dancer in Fort Collins. Like she posts a video and it's instantly got however many, like it just instantly has millions of views and generates. And so, well, this is okay if you don't know this. Somehow my boys do. So like nobody's saying anything, so good. Love your snake, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh, 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 I didn't see a snake. Oh, there is a snake. It's around your neck. Oh, I could have done the whole lecture and not noticed that. How would I have not noticed that? Wow. Nice snake, by the way. All right. Why else? Yes or no? I'm assuming again. I know that. Well, go ahead. What are your reasons for saying yes or no?
I said no, just because by any definition, there's so many systemic issues that we have in the United States that make it hard for anybody to progress. But depending on your social stature and a bunch of other factors, it's harder or easier for a certain person, but it affects everybody.
Right. Okay, good. Who else?
I said yes, because there's so many like scholarship opportunities. Like my roommate's Latino and he's paying $2,000 to go here every year because he's got all these awesome scholarships that help him. And I just feel like, we a lot of people acknowledge all the race problems we have in our country. Like how many Black Lives Matter protesters were there? There's so many. Like, I just feel like a lot of people recognize it.
Right. What was I going to say? Oh, what was I going to say? No, I lost that thought. All right. Good contribution, though. Oh, yeah. And I think the number of scholarships based on race alone for college is 0.025%. So it's a very, very low number. But even just regular scholarship stuff, I have a friend's mom who was on top of it and applied for like so many different things, and I did not. And I was like, it seemed like a lot of hassle and a lot of time, but yeah. So there's things like that out there that are there to help. That some of them go unused, right? So where are people like trying to do that? Because that could mean yes, obviously. Good. Who else? Yes or no?
I put no for, I guess, my family. Well, the majority of us come from Alabama, so there's a lot of assumptions that come with people from Alabama. So our family's been working class for basically centuries now, and we haven't gotten anywhere.
Sure.
Even though, sorry about the cat. We've been engineers and like working in construction, and we've like literally built facilities. We're not going anywhere. So,
Right.
my mother was the first person in my entire family to go to college.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've looked at that early on in the semester, right? How many people around the world go to college? And it's so interesting because there are people whose parents never went, and that's why you're going. It's like, again, my parents were both teachers, and they were like, that's also why you're going and don't have a choice in it. Good. Okay, so I've looked at generations of my family. We're hardworking, but we really haven't gotten ahead. So no, on that level. Also, I speak cat, so it's all good. Right now, I think we still have 2 cats. Yeah, we have 2 cats.
do you want can you take him?
What?
Do you want him?
No, thank you, though. I'm also, unless a cat wants to live outside and hunt mice on my farm, then I would be okay with like a new cat. And I'm hoping that one of our cats some days gets like 3 legs and 1 eye, and just like, because I used to have a bunch of friends in the Midwest that had farm cats that would hang out at their farm, and they'd be like 22-year-old cats that would just be like really scary cats, but they lose appendages, but they keep going because they're farm cats. So anyway, all right. Well, anybody else on this one? I naturally assume that with a classroom full of people paying a lot of money to go to college, that everybody would say yes to this question. So I get that there's a lot of versions of what does getting ahead mean and all of that. I would probably have been one of those people in college that would be like, no, system is rigged. But then of course, then I'm sitting there in that classroom at the time, right? Racking up all sorts of debt that I didn't even know I was racking up. So I probably didn't put 2 and 2 together there with the money thing anyway. All right, let's continue on. Okay, let me pull this up again. And let's look at wealth because it's an important part of stratification. All right, so what is wealth? We talk about the accumulation of wealth, passing that on from generation to generation. So net worth, I was always like, I don't know what net worth means. And that's probably because I don't have to worry about that, right? Like there's a reason for that, Jason. No, like you can't look me up online and be like net worth. It just, you know, it'd be like independently wealthy, Bruce Wayne and myself. All right, so wealth, value of everything a person owns minus the value of everything owed. Now, I wish our financial system worked that way, but it doesn't really, right? Like we measure profit in, we sell $3 million worth of cigarettes, not we sell, or $30 million worth of cigarettes, not we sold $30 million worth of cigarettes and people had cancer and it's like $10 million of impact on people not working and on the healthcare system. And then that's a different number, right? We're starting to look at that. Economists are starting to look at it differently, but this is a simple way, right? Home equity, vehicles, stocks, bonds, cash, other forms of investment assets, and built up over a lifetime and passed down over generations to create new opportunities. The important thing here is not only passed down to other generations, but that wealth and the accumulation of wealth creates new opportunities. And either that's there to a certain degree, a little bit, a lot, not at all. So, you know, that's like a safety net for folks. Is it paycheck to paycheck, or is it paycheck to paycheck with like a savings that would last you a while? Or is it just, you'd have to cash out, you know, you have a heart attack, the healthcare system doesn't work for you and you've got to mortgage your house. What's that look like? If you do or have had access though to high quality education, you know, business ventures, access to travel and leisure, or financial security, or even, of course, one of the most important things when we talk about that, the ability to create new wealth, right? That definitely is a security piece or an access piece, and it's important. So wealth gaps, if we're looking at European to minority, white to African American 8-1, and white to Latino 12-1. So this is a wealth gap. So what have you had the opportunity to build up and over how long? And that's one of the things that we need to consider here, right? I guess that if we were to reverse this, which is the first thing that kind of my sociological mind thinks of, what if we got to a point where African Americans made twice as much as what European Americans made? I mean, or 3 times as much, or 4. At what point would European Americans take to the streets and march and protest for equality? And again, statistically measurable equality, right? And so what does this happen? Well, how does this happen, Jason? Well, it happens because until 50 years ago or 60 years ago, some people couldn't get a bank loan if you were going to be in a certain neighborhood, or you simply wouldn't have a house that was sold to you in a certain neighborhood, even if you did have that money or that access to pay for it. You just started going to school. Your family did 60 years ago, higher education, or even K through 12 education. And other people have been doing it for generations and generations and generations. So that's where we get and how we can look at, you know, this. So as far as like how long it takes to get that gap. So I don't know what it would be. I would think that if the African American or Latino to white gap was 2 to 1, the low or 1 to 1 even, that people would be really upset somehow. And it would seem like a really huge miscarriage of justice and equality. So likewise, right, by the time you're at 8 to 1 or 12 to 1, this is institutional. This is purposeful. The institute, to get this takes some work. To get this level of statistical wealth inequality, you got to work on that for a while, and you got to work on it hard. And I mean in awful ways, right? I'm not being cynical at all. I'm simply saying to outpace people. I mean, think of 4 to 1, 5 to 1. This is double that, which means that it's massive. So many do not have the same opportunity, right? That's an understatement. Because one thing leads to another, The color of your skin and poverty you're born into can lead to lack of education, which could lead to early pregnancy, which could lead to, depending on where you're living. And so now, like I said before, you're talking about something you didn't choose, your gender, your ascribed, your race. And here you are living life at an average of 10 years less because of social circumstances and opportunities that were afforded to some and not others. So, like I said before, of course, people can start off with nothing and have a lot. And honestly, somebody you just called out the entirety of, white middle America. And what I would say is, I have just, it's there. We can look at these numbers. We can find these citations. No problem with that whatsoever. It's social science. And by calling out, I would hope that I just don't even know, like I bet it seems like calling out, and but again, and I may have mentioned this before, if these people here on top, right, these people on the bottom, and you get a little bit more down here, the folks on the top they're not losing anything. And maybe though their income inequality goes from like 8 to 1 to 4 to 1. I guess my question, not a liberal or a conservative question, is what's like, there's still something wrong, right, with a 4 to 1 income or wealth equality gap, right? It still seems really extreme to me, even if you half it or third it. So how can we change that, right? That's really the most important part of this. And that doesn't mean disadvantaging people. It means making the playing field more even so that unearned advantages don't dominate so much. And I guess as a person who identifies as a gender male and as a minority status or my status as far as race is like pale or peachish pale or European descent or Irish descent, I have a lot of statistical advantages. I may not be like swimming in money and advantage, but I don't think that those unearned privileges are good for people. Like, you get to rely on them for too long and it's a crutch and it does you a disservice. And so people who identify as the gender male, we're finding out that males are graduating with lower GPAs and less frequently than their female counterparts. And, they've been given a pass in certain ways in the classroom to get certain advantages. And now that those advantages are starting to even somewhat even out, there's a lot to be said for having to build intestinal fortitude and not having privilege prop you up. Because privilege, like I said, it only goes so far, and then most of the time it's a disadvantage. All right. So if we look at the difference between a caste system and a class system, we are in a class system here, right? In the United States, caste system, that is social stratification based on ascription or birth. So ascription would be not what you achieved, right? You have ascribed status and you have achieved status. So gender at birth, things you don't choose, religion of your family, race, right? And then a class system, social stratification based on both birth and individual achievement. And of course, you already have a good idea that there's not a lot of movement within a caste system, if any. But again, as we'll look at a class system, we seem to have more movement, but there's not as much movement as maybe we purport to have. So These are two terms right here that I want you to have for the next exam. I think they're really important. They're social terms that are, again, like counterculture and subculture, in-group, out-group. Important, basic, and give us that basis for understanding. So rankings apply to social categories of people in a stratified system, no matter whether that's caste, or class or whatever. And ranking influences life experiences and opportunities. Not whether you have a lot of opportunities, whether you have any opportunities or some opportunities at all, certain life experiences, based on that social ranking. And we can look at it as a teardrop here in a class system or a ladder. The teardrop is more realistic in terms of very few people at the top, some in the middle, and then a large base as far as that. But we can look at the two differences here, achieved status and ascribed status. So achieved, linked to acquisition of socially valued credentials or skills. You try for that, right? You're achieving, you work hard, you learn stuff, you test, you go to school, you prove that you know things. People want your expertise, that matters. You achieve that. We just started a whole bunch, we started like 1,000 different starter plants. We planted seeds yesterday. And I'm just so excited. And I love taking the little Jiffy 7s or little peat moss like circle things, and they get watered, and then you put the seeds in there. And then there's like 5 tomato seeds. And then you have to unwrap them and separate the plants super gently. Anyway, that takes time, right? People who are master gardeners, people who are farmers, people that gain knowledge of whatever it is, that takes time, and that's achievement. And then we look at something like ascribed status, so linked to characteristics that cannot be altered. So, and of course, there's some altering with that, but again, right out of the gate, things that you don't decide, things that were conditions of being, right? That could also be ability or disability, right? And a lot of these just things that you were born with. And of course, being born in a certain culture, whatever culture that is, and then identifying with certain genders, certain races, certain all religious, ideologies, that people associate then that, right, with certain level of status. So you're already starting off in a certain place based on things that you didn't choose or didn't achieve. So we also have to understand, not just in this system, but in many systems, really hierarchical positions of social categories tend to change slowly over time. What's that mean? It means that things might be a little more equal in India, and that nation is changing and growing in education and family planning and industry and production. Even so, right, that changes slowly over time. All right, there's the other system that I mentioned that we might talk about, or that we're going to talk about. So slavery. These are some global systems of stratification. Does slavery still exist? Yes, and unfortunately, like the sex slave trade emerging is something that I can barely even sit to stand and read about, because it's so scary for me as a parent, and other things like that. And of course, there are some manufacturing scenarios where people pay a lot of money to get to an island that might be made in the United States. We kind of own it, so that they have big production facilities there. But to even get off those islands, which require passage, that has money that you couldn't make it for years and years and years. So it becomes an indentured servitude situation. So a lot of versions of slavery. Chattel slavery, we could look at prisoners in our total institution, our prisons, doing work for, however many 40 cents a day or whatever, making stuff for other people. That's another example of that. Caste system, and you'll need to know each one of these and the definitions and how to differentiate, because we'll be asking questions about these in the next test. The caste system, people's status is determined at birth. Ascription, that's what you need to know. And it means that it's closed. Open system, closed system. Closed system just allows for very little change in position, right? If you are untouchable, that means that you're so low, you shouldn't be touched. And your chance to move out of that, literally very, 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 very small. And the class system, what we experience here and in many other places in the world, there are places besides India that we can look at the caste system, but based on ownership and control of resources, type of work people do, achievement to certain social positions and occupational positions, and we consider it an open system, right? So in a closed system, little change in mobility, open system, much more change or possibility for social mobility in some cases. Always got to have that in parentheses, right? That doesn't mean that you haven't been, or your parents haven't been working hard for generation after generation, and you're just pretty much in the same place. And that's not just you working, that's also other social dynamics changing that maybe squeeze out the number of people that were in that middle class. And so it's not just you and your family, but it's the system and how that system responds to it. I can't see any good reason in the world, after trying to look at it, listen to economists, and consider why half the government and more wouldn't consider, a good portion of our government wouldn't consider $15 minimum wage, as an economic stimulus, is what people deserve, is the fact that people cannot survive already on what they are. So, that seems like something that people who are elected, their constituents, the people who vote for them, back in really high percentages, in bipartisan ways. So why doesn't that happen? Why is it taking so long for both parties and other parties to get serious legislation to equal women's pay, or people identify as gender female pay? Statistical, institutionalized inequalities that we know about, why do they or why don't they change? And particularly here, we're talking about an entire system of stratification and how we organize society, right? All right. Do you believe in the American dream? Let's share. And over here, and I asked that last time, actually. Do you believe in the American dream? 37 yes, 31 no, C 2. All right, pretty even split. Half the class yes, half the class no. And then I asked, what is the American dream? It's like when I asked the idea of karma before, none of us really got it culturally correct. However, everybody that answered had a collective sense, of what that was within a parameter, right? So what did the class say? 66 responses as far as what is the American dream to you in one word. 8 said opportunity, 5 said success, 5 said freedom. So opportunity, success, freedom. Number 4, or in 4th place with 3 votes, false. Happiness, 3. Hope, lie, 2. Unrealistic, 2. Propaganda, 2. Rigged, 2. Capitalism, 2. Well-being, family, stress-free, equity, unachievable. A vague idea meant to keep people questioning to improve their lives rather than questioning the ones that keep them down. Having the ability to work up in life, school or business. Subjective, effort, corrupt, achievement. The opportunity for a better way of life by moving to the United States. Good. Work, chance, ideal, dated, motivation, grit. Well, I like that. I just like that word anyway. Grit. I think anybody that was born and raised in the 70s and 80s was born and raised with grit, accidentally. Now there's all sorts of people like talking about grit in terms of educational statistics and characteristics and things like that. Still like it. Stereotypical, false hope, limited, American dream, successful, selective, scam, unfair, having the resources to do what you want, inequality. So we're so split, and I love it. Do you believe in the American dream? Yes or no? I think this is different than can you get ahead? So why yes or why no? I love it because we're split right down the middle. What do you think?
So I'll be perfectly honest. I never learned what the American dream was, so I Googled it.
Did you just Google it?
No, I Googled it when I answered it.
Do you have written down what Google tells us is the American dream?
It basically says like everyone has the same opportunity as everybody else.
Okay.
So I would like to think that we can do that. So I put yes, that I believe in it.
Cool.
In reality, I don't know how feasible it is.
Sure, we're human beings. There's a lot of things that we can envision that sound fantastic. And then we start to do those things. And then, then it either shakes out or it doesn't from there. That's why I love sociology so much, because it's a study of human behavior. And I'm one of those people too. And a lot of people are like, if you only get choices A or B, you're likely to be C. And the fact that exists at all is why we study sociology. Why else do you believe or don't believe in the American dream?
I guess like I would believe that people believe in the American dream or the ideals of the American dream, but whether or not, what the American dream is supposed to be still exists is, not something I believe in.
All right, good. What else? Who else?
I said no because, like Lindsay said, it like the definition, or at least the one I was given, like in school and stuff, is about opportunity, and there's also this thing that goes along with it about like everyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get to the same place, and like that's just not true. Like it's statistically proven that's just not true. People have disadvantages. People are born into systems of abuse. People are born into systems of incarceration. It's like it is not equal. Not everyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps if they're trapped in a life where everyone around them is going to prison and they turn to crime because it's the only thing they know. Like that's not the same opportunities as someone who is born rich and goes to an Ivy League. So
Sure, and like we acknowledged, I think with the first or second slide of this chapter, is that can happen, right? Like for sure, it's just not near statistically a majority, right? Like we know that there's some pretty heavy statistical disadvantages, and not ones that people aren't working on, but ones that remain, right? Okay, good. Definition from Google: the belief that anyone, regardless of where they're born or what class they're born into, can attain their own version of success in a society in which upward mobility is possible for everyone. Wow. All right. It's a good definition. Yep, good definition. All right, good. And I think that really your sense of the American dream, or if you kind of believe in that idea, or even if you don't, if I'm like, what's the version out there of that version, you would know what to say, right? We all kind of have that collective agreement idea. And so what do I have here? I have this one: the belief that if people work hard and play by the rules, that they will have a chance to get ahead. It is based on the assumption that people in the United States, oops, let me put this up here. Sorry about that. It is based on the assumption that people in the United States have equality of opportunity regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, sex, or religion, or ability, varying levels of ability, so many other things as well. So I think this also is that. The belief that if you work hard, play by the rules, you'll have a chance to get ahead, but it also rests on an assumption that we have equality, right? So, good. Okay. We are at 1:48. Let me stop sharing. Are there any questions, students, about anything as we proceed forward? We'll pick up here on Monday. I would work on the paper. I would look to the next discussion maybe, and get to that piece. Yeah. Any concerns or questions from anybody?
Do you have an estimate on when we will be starting chapter 9, just so I know when to read it?
Wednesday or Friday. No, I don't think we're not going to get to it Monday. I'm still going to be on this chapter, but if you're ahead or whatever. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have, for the paper, did you want us to put like the ingredients of the list of foods in a graph, or do you just want us to list it out, or does it matter, or did you want us to write it in paragraph form?
Usually for organizational purposes, even for a Word document, people do 2 columns, the organic, on the left or right, or in the conventional on the right. And then no need for tables for the 10 individual ingredients. That's just 1 period, space, Rabelsleben, dash the sentence or 2 about it and a citation. And, I want to stress this piece with in-text citations as well. I want you could do APA or MLA, but whatever it is, it has to be in-text citations. Can't just be a reference at the end with nothing, nowhere Like, what is that? What style is it? Stay consistent. If you have questions about that, talk to the GTAs, talk to the writing center. They are well versed. I would say talk to me. I wrote my thesis a while ago. I know plenty about citations, but they're currently like, doing it. So I think that, remember to reach out to your GTAs if you have questions, or if you're not familiar with what format that might be or you might use. And nowadays a good Google search of MLA citation format gives you a pretty clear, really a pretty clear understanding, Other questions about the paper, anything else? All right, well, I'm looking here. Let me see. Should I screen share this or not? I probably should. So I'm going to screen share this, and you could tell me what you think. I'm looking at buying this Boba Fett figure here. That's $285. I'm pre-ordering it. It's a 12-inch, and the new one for the Mandalorian where he's got the like robes on and stuff. I love it. So, or there's the deluxe version with him before he gets his armor back, and it comes with two of them. And look at this, a stormtrooper helmet and fire. Oh, look at all this. So your teacher's 47, and this is, my conundrum of the day. Now, I can't afford either one of them, but I'm pretty sure they don't take that money if I pre-order it all at once right now. So maybe I could save up for a while. Hold on, let's see what the chat says. Half my rent, I think you should buy it. Alex, I'm going to take that under serious advisement. Anyway, everybody, that's right. How ridiculous is my life? I'm just having fun. As a broke college student, I don't know, because as soon as you place that order, the money's gone. You're right, though. But Star Wars, so worth it. And I'll tell you what, I was such a heavy collector of Star Wars that when I was in my undergraduate, I just knew they would come back someday. And in 95 or something, they released them again. They were kind of buff. Like, they weren't any good, but they were just trying it again. And the second I saw those at a Walmart in that town in Iowa where I was going to school at Luther College, I was like, yes. So it's been on for a long time now. If there's one thing that I'm okay investing in, it's that. Because if I got really desperate, I'm sure I could sell all these guys, but I would never do such a thing. All right. Boba Fett's overrated. Connor, you've just lowered your grade 2 full grade levels on a Friday. Got to do something, buddy, to dig yourself out of that hole. Hey. Elena, you probably shouldn't laugh. You've got a Green Bay thing behind you. You've already lowered your grade.
I can laugh at him. He's my boyfriend. It's fine.
What?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I just made that connection from out of nowhere.
Yeah, we've been dating for a year and a half.
Well, grade's not looking good for either one of you as a couple. I might suggest.
You should have seen.
Anytime I ever see anybody that says Boba Fett's overrated, no, that I understand for the amount of screen time, right, and the fact that he just kind of flew into a hole and got killed. And I know, but we've got to think of what happened in between and how great he was, or not. Anyway, everybody, hey, be good people, do good things. There we go, Chicago. How many people are like lurking off screen? I'm just curious. Like, besides in other countries, how many people are lurking? I could. Here we go. This is the one that just got eaten by my dogs. Ouch. And did you see though that we're losing Akeem Hicks?
Yeah.
Like,
and Fuller.
This is no good. This is actually.
And Fuller. Fuller's my favorite player.
This is a very sad day. I'm impressed that you're wearing your Bears hat because I saw Akeem was gone and I was like, oh. Anyway,
yeah, for me that was Fuller. It was like, oh.
I was also like that last night. Yeah. Anyway, everybody.
We have a whole man cave. Like, this is decked out in Packer stuff. If anyone wants to see it, who wants to see a whole Packer?
It'd be like I'm a vampire. Like, you'd open the door and you'd have to invite me in, and then I'd be like,
oh yeah, there's Donald Driver on that wall.
I grew up
Matthews. We got
right by the border where it was like 20 minutes to the border, so it was like violent, like just. My Sunday isn't even predicated on whether the Bears win or lose. It's whether if the Packers lose, still a good Sunday. Bears are probably much going to guaranteed to lose a lot, but I got used to that a long time ago. Anyway, everybody, hey, I love y'all. Be good people, do good things, stay safe, mask up. Thanks for all the snakes and cats and opinions and positivity. We need a lot more of that. Bye, everybody.